started. So my name is Jed Johnson, and I currently serve as the Vice President of National Programs and Network Advancement here at our National Office of Easter Seals. And on behalf of Easter Seals, as well as the University of Illinois at Chicago Department of Disability and Human Development, I would like to welcome you to today's webinar. I'll begin by just providing a few webinar instructions. If you're connected today both by phone and by webinar room, please ensure that your computer speakers are muted at this time. As a reminder, we do offer live captioning. To access the live captioning, you would just press Control F8 once you're logged into the webinar room. Again, that's Control F8. For the duration of the webinar, we'll have all phone lines muted. To submit questions, which can be done at any point throughout the session, you can either enter it into the chat box, which is kind of at the lower left corner, or you're welcome to send questions to me via email at jjohnson@easterseals.com, and I'll tabulate those and share those with our speakers at the end of the call. At the end of the presentation, we'll first begin by answering the questions submitted via chat and via email. Then what we'll do is open up the telephone lines for additional questions. Just note that during that time, all the lines will be active, so please mute your phone to ensure there's no background noise, or do not put the call on hold, as we'll then hear some lovely someone else's music and messages, which has at times happened. If for any reason you are unable to access the webinar platform, the phone line again is 866-899-0133, and our conference code is 968-712-3072. And again, if you didn't receive a copy of the PowerPoint presentations and would like to listen in and follow along, just send me a quick email, and I'm happy to send that out to you. But hopefully everything's working relatively smoothly. Anyway, without further ado, let me introduce our two speakers for today, Dr. Tamar Heller and Katie Arnold. Dr. Heller is professor and head of the University of Illinois at Chicago's Department of Disability and Human Development, and directs its University Center of Excellence in Developmental Disabilities for the state of Illinois. She's also the principal investigator of the Family Support Research and Training Center and the Rehabilitation Research and Training Center on Developmental Disabilities and Health, both at University of Illinois at Chicago. She has a long commitment to research that helps support families and people with disabilities. Katie Arnold is the Director of Community Education at UIC's UCED. She's also co-director of the National Resource Center on Family Support. In addition, another hat that Katie wears is as the Executive Director of the Sibling Leadership Network for people who have a brother or sister with disabilities. Both Tamar and Katie are co-authors of the Future is Now curriculum, which they'll share more about with you today. And with that, it's my pleasure to turn you over first, I believe, to Tamar.
All right. Well, we're really thrilled that there's so many people that are interested in the Future is Now and in this particular training. I just want to give you a little context first about our center that this is part of. And you'll hear some more about the background on the Future is Now and all the next steps that Katie will also go through. Just a little bit about the Family Support Research and Training Center. It's funded by the National Institute on Disability, Independent Living, and Rehabilitation Research. And I'll tell you about some of the goals of it. First, it's to define the state of science on family support. So it really looks across the lifespan, life course, and across disabilities and aging. It's to generate new knowledge in the critical policy areas of self-direction and managed care, and in cultural competent peer-to-peer family interventions. So there's quite a few interventions that are part of the center. generate and implement a vision for policy and practice in family support through a National Family Support Resource Center. And you'll see they have wonderful web pages as part of it. Contribute to improvements in community living, participation, health, function, and other outcomes for individuals with disabilities who are supported by family members. As part of it, in addition to developing strategies and looking at policies, dissemination information, there's several research projects. The first is the development of the strategic plan. The second is looking at promising practices in family support and looking at what's out there nationally. There's a project on family member roles and well-being in self-directed waiver programs. Understanding experiences, trends, and needs in self-directed support programs. A project on family support and managed care. And an intervention, Parents Taking Action, a parent training program for Latino families of children with autism syndrome disorders. So this is just a very general background, and as part of that, that's what the Future Is Now interventions and Train the Trainer is coming out of.
Thanks, Tamar, for providing that background. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Arnold, and with that context, this Train the Trainer Caregiver Intervention Project is part of the Family Support Research and Training Center. Easterfield is leading coordination of this effort, where we've identified 3 different interventions that have been effective with family caregivers, and we're going to be teaching organizations how to implement them. And intervention researchers like Tamar and I here at UIC will be conducting the training and the evaluation. So as I mentioned, we have 3 different interventions over 3 years. Last year, we implemented Parents Taking Action, an intervention specific to Latino families of people with autism. And this year, we are focusing on The Future Is Now, related to doing future planning with family caregivers. And I'm trying to advance the slide forward. I can go backwards, but for some reason it's not allowing me to go forward, Julie. So if you have that capability to advance the slide forward.
Sure. Katie, I will do that right now. I'm going to reload your content.
Okay, thank you. And I'll keep talking. I think many of you have the slides as well, and you can follow along. So we're really excited to be putting out this request for applications related to the Future Is Now seed grants. We're going to be awarding 3 seed grants for $5,000 each to community-based organizations that provide services and supports to people with disabilities and their families. And these organizations will learn and implement The Future Is Now to help families plan for the future. And the application is, there's a link that goes to a SurveyMonkey that we will also, we can email out after this if you haven't seen the application. And Jed also was kind enough to email an attachment with a Word version of the application. But here, now that the slides are reloaded, you can see the link there to go to the application. And the applications are due by 5 p.m. Eastern Time. I didn't put the Eastern Time on here. On Monday, January 8th of 2018. The Future Is Now curriculum was developed at UIC's Institute on Disability and Human Development, really after seeing a need for families who needed to plan for the future, especially as parents age. The purpose of this project is that we want to build the capacity of new organizations to be able to implement The Future Is Now and help more families plan for the future. While there are a lot of curriculums and resources out there to help families plan for the future, this curriculum is one of the only ones with evidence behind it showing proven outcomes for families. We want more organizations to be able to use this, and we want to collect more data to continue to evaluate how it's helping families. For the 3 organizations that are selected, you'll each get a hard copy of the curriculum with a CD-ROM that has all of the materials on it. The Future is Now curriculum includes an instructor's manual as well as a workbook for family members and a workbook for individuals with intellectual disabilities. There are a lot of interactive worksheets. This slide shows some of those interactive worksheets, a lot of pictures to help people with intellectual disabilities think through different areas and aspects of what they want for the future. This is a person-centered and a family-centered model. The curriculum consists of 6 sessions. The first session is one where you'll find someone in your local area that is an expert on legal and financial planning to hold a training session about this topic to really get families to start thinking about planning for the future. Most people think about the legal and financial aspect first, and they want to know about special needs trusts, how to deal with transitioning of guardianship or alternatives to guardianship, and much more. So we've found that having a session on the topic of legal and financial planning initially is a draw to bring families to come get a taste of the first part of future planning. And this is where your organization can then pitch for them to consider doing the next 5 sessions to dive in more and to develop a full plan for the future called a letter of intent. This legal and financial planning session is usually where organizations bring in outside speakers with this expertise for about 2 to 3 hours to maybe present for about an hour or so and then open it up for questions from the families. And make sure to leave time for your organization, a representative from your organization to then share more information about the Future is Now intervention and how they can sign up for it. This would be more of a lecture-style informational presentation in a large room or auditorium where you would invite many families to come, whether they participate in the Future is Now or not. And so it's sort of the kickoff. And then you will implement the Future is Now, and the curriculum has 5 specific sessions in it. Barriers to plan for the future and the letter of intent. This really helps families get started and gives them a sense of where they will be going. It works through some of their fears, which have been barriers for their family to plan for the future, and talks about the benefits of planning and what their hopes and dreams are for the future. Next, a session is focused on relationships and support. This is how to support the person with disabilities in developing and maintaining important relationships in his or her life. There's a session on residential and community living support, another session on employment support, and a final session on goal planning, really setting goals and identifying key people who will be responsible for certain aspects of the plan. In terms of logistics of the curriculum, the goal is really to help families develop a letter of intent, which is a roadmap about the future. It's really a living, breathing document that will continue to change and evolve over time, but this helps them think about key areas that are important, gets them discussing those areas and developing plans. The sessions are generally, though it can be adapted, 2.5 hours each, around 2 to 4 weeks apart, approximately 10 to 20 families per group, per training group or cohort. And families must include, at a minimum, the person with disabilities and at least one other family member. Though it's really encouraged to have multiple family members come, including siblings, parents, other family members that the person with disability wants to come be part of the plan for the future. There's some really important unique features about the Future is Now. The first one is related to peer support. People with disabilities and families learn a lot from each other throughout their time together. It includes times for families and people with disabilities to meet in peer groups to discuss aspects of future planning. This is important because, for example, it allows people with intellectual and developmental disabilities to meet with their peers and problem solve. It also allows parents and siblings to meet separately and share their perspective with each other. And then there are times where everyone's together in a large group and can share their different perspectives as people with disabilities, siblings, parents, and other family members, with everyone in the group to learn from each other. There's time between sessions where families have homework to do and they need to continue the conversation and think about things. And in this way, they bring the information home to other people in the family that may not be coming to the training, and they can involve more of their family in the future planning process. A second unique feature is the inclusion of peer trainers. Having co-trainers as people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and family members is a really important part of the way the training is put on. And so be thinking about that and who you know at your organization that you could tap to be those peer trainers. At least one person with intellectual and developmental disabilities and at least one family member should be a co-trainer delivering the content. And the third aspect is the evaluation of outcomes, that this curriculum has been evaluated. Tamara is going to be sharing some of the outcomes of the evaluation in a little bit. And you know, it really strengthens this curriculum to know that it has shown proven effectiveness for families. A few things for you and your organizations to think about related to applying for this opportunity. Thinking about who will be the key, at least one staff person at your organization to be able to learn the training and then oversee the implementation of the training. You know, you'll need to be thinking about finding speakers, as I talked about earlier, for that first legal and financial session. You'll need to be thinking about space for the training session. Where will you hold it? How the space will work for the number of families you're going to be working with. And you know, other logistical things, whether you want to include food for families in the budget, depending on the timing of the training session, when you hold it, how to find and train peer trainers, and possibly include them in the budget. So those are just a few things to think about, and you may have further questions when we open it up in a little bit. I'm going to turn it over now to Tamar to share a little more of the evidence of outcomes.
Okay. What I want to tell you is that when we developed The Future Is Now, it was a project of years of trying different approaches. And we found that, and we had a whole advisory group of 8 different provider agencies. We also had families, and we also had people with disabilities all advising on us. And we had tried different things that we had evaluated, and some things worked, some things didn't work in the past. And this one seemed to be the most effective way that we found. And one of the reasons that we think this was so effective is because it deals with the psychological issues of families and really trying to get, in many ways, it's very much working out different issues in families. And the chance that people have with disabilities to talk separately from their families and then to do problem solving together, and also doing assignments in between sessions and having very concrete products at the end. And I think that really helped make the difference. So the reason we say that it's evidence-based is because we actually did have, believe it or not, a randomized design that it was lots of, with before and after. We looked at baseline and also a year later. So that's the scientific part of me talking. But the reason this is important is because it got recognized nationally as something that was evidence-based, which we know is important, especially if you want to get funding, etc. It also got several national awards because of that. So let me tell you what some of the outcomes were. And these outcomes that I'm telling you are things that were different between the intervention group and the group that did not get our training. One of the important things that happened is people that didn't have special needs trust developed special needs trust. 24% who did not have one before developed one. That's a big deal because that takes lawyers, and that's not a small thing. And it involves a lot of talking with families and thinking about various aspects. It becomes very emotional, this whole issue of future planning. Residential planning action, 64% who had not taken action did so. That again is huge. Before we started, we found that 50% of the families hadn't done any kind of planning or even talking about it. And they didn't even talk to siblings about any of these issues. Mostly because it's very anxiety-provoking to think about it. And so, it takes some skill in dealing with these issues. Almost everyone developed a letter of intent. Well, that was one of the goals, so that's not surprising, but they did it. And that was the important part. The last part that I have on this slide, caregiving burden decreased, that was amazing to me because that is the first study I've been involved with where we actually saw differences between before they started and after. And that's also comparing with another group. Sometimes you'll see evaluations will say, well, did your burden decrease? And they'll say yes. But that's not the same as comparing between groups and over time. And I'll tell you the reason why it decreased, because this is a 9-item measure, because one of the items says, I worry about the future. And that, so many families worry about the future, even when their kids little. And that's what went down a lot, that they're not as worried about the future because they have some plan in place. Next. They also found that the daily choice making of individuals with developmental disabilities increased, according to the caregiver report. And that's because they learned a lot about notions about self-determination, and they also, in the process of working out, the goal planning together, they really developed more respect for the choices of the person with disabilities. And the individuals with developmental disabilities reported doing more leisure activities and having fewer unmet leisure needs. So that was one part that was important to them, especially because these people were getting older, many of them that were in our study. So there were other outcomes that I would say are systemic outcomes that came out of this. One is there was a group of individuals with developmental disabilities that developed the People First chapter as a result of participating in this training. So, those were some of, I think we did a lot of raising of awareness of issues for families and for people with disabilities. Afterwards, other families led additional workshops, and so it continued on, at least certainly one other iteration of it. What I really like about this project is that it's building the capacity of your organization. It's not just us coming in and doing something, but because it's a train-the-trainer that you'll be able to continue to do that. As long as you have enough staff that's participating, which, by the way, I would suggest more than one staff, because if you just have one staff, you might get turnover, and that won't be as good. And also, you may want to have some family, potential peers also participating. One of the agencies adopted the letter of intent for everybody, not just the people that were in this particular project that we did. And it became a way of basically doing person-centered planning. This very much fits in with all the edicts around person-centered planning. Those are the principles that this is all based on. And also on ideas of supported decision-making. This is very much a supported decision-making approach to thinking about the future. And we did a collaboration with the Illinois Department on Aging that was very interested. They got an Administration on Aging grant, and that came after this. So those were some of the systemic outcomes that can come out of this kind of training.
So for this project, the 3 organizations that we select, we're going to be giving you the curriculum, as I mentioned. Now the curriculum is available. Any organization can purchase it, and many organizations have purchased it and implemented it on their own. For this particular project, along with the seed funding, you'll also be getting the online training from our organization, as well as ongoing technical assistance and support from us as you implement the Future is Now with the families at your organization. In terms of goals and expectations, we want you to commit at least one staff member or project coordinator to learn the training and coordinate the effort. As Tamar mentioned, if you're able to commit more than one staff, that can really help build the capacity at your organization and help if there is turnover at your organization. Also, to be able to attend the online training that we've scheduled, that Tamar and I and some other team members here at UIC will be doing with you via webinar. Then for you to recruit a minimum of 2 peer trainers, like I mentioned earlier, including a family member and a person with disabilities, to help implement the trainer, recruit a speaker to host the kickoff legal financial training, to recruit a minimum of 6 families of people with disabilities. Attendees must include the person with a disability and at least one person considered to be a family, and that is really, the definition of that can be up to the person with disabilities. They consider somebody to be a family member. Although a number of family members are welcome to attend, I know on a future slide we had suggested that we really want 10 to 20 families as part of each cohort. We know that there is often some drop-off of families, and so recruiting a minimum of 10 and up to 20 so that you actually complete the training with at least 6 families. And then implement the Future is Now curriculum with the families, complete and submit quarterly reports, and provide evaluation information, and attend, this is a typo, biannual. I think it means bi-monthly, every other month, teleconference calls that we'll have after we do the training to continue to provide support to your organizations. In terms of the timeline for the 3 organizations that received the grant funding, we anticipate it to look something like this. We kind of are proposing these dates, February 9th, 16th, and 23rd, to do the training via webinar with your organizations. We encourage you to have 1 to 4 people from each organization participate in the online Train the Trainer that we will conduct. And each session will be about 2 to 4 hours. After we select the organizations, we will nail down the specifics of this. And there will also be some tasks to complete in between. Also, after receiving the Train the Trainer, your organization will then implement the Future is Now, conduct those 6 sessions at your site with at least 6 families. And that will likely take a couple of months after the training for you to then be recruiting families and preparing for the training. So we're thinking that the training would likely be conducted maybe starting in April or May and going through September or October. This is flexible. This is something that we'd like you to think through and in your application to put what you're proposing and what will work best for your organization related to the timeline. So that's kind of an overview. We're pleased that there is so much interest, and now I'll turn it over to Jed so that we can open it up for questions.
Perfect. Thank you. It is now time for questions, and if you haven't already done so, we'll start off with 2 things. One, please input your question into the chat feature, and we'll read those back. Or you can send me an email at jjohnson@easterseals.com. Once we respond and share those questions, then we'll open up the lines, and hopefully we won't have any background noise and folks will be able to ask questions. But we do have, I'll start out with one question that came in via email. So the question, Katie, is, our organization does not provide direct services in the form of adult day, employment, residential services, etc. The name of their organization provides technical assistance, training, resources, tools, and materials, etc., all in an effort to build capacity of people with disabilities and their families. On the application itself, it appears that we're looking for a direct service organization. Is that correct, or would service include training, technical assistance, etc.?
Thank you for the question. Your organization would be open to applying. This is not only for direct service organizations. An organization like yours that provides training, and even if you do not provide direct service, that is fine. If you have the capacity to conduct this training with families, then you would fit the criteria to be selected.
Thanks, Katie. And we have a number of questions that came in via the chat feature. We'll have Julie read those out to you, and then you can respond.
All right, so the first one is, Katie, if you could just clarify or confirm that the application will be sent via email in a Word document.
Well, I can actually respond to that. So applications can be submitted in one of two ways. We do have the online form, so if folks want to use the online SurveyMonkey tool, they're welcome to enter their application information. And I think I was checking the other day, and we already had 5 applications successfully submitted. I will go in episodically and check that, and then just confirm to those folks who are submitting online applications to let them know that it's been successfully received. The other way, and I did send out an MS Word version, as Katie had pointed out. That went out with other materials, the PowerPoint and the login information for today. So if people would prefer to submit a Word version, MS Word version of the application, we'll still keep it to the same character limits. But you're welcome to submit that. That can just come into me at jjohnson@easterseals.com. Again, I'll confirm submission and receipt of that and acknowledge that to you, and all those then will be reviewed after the due date of January 8th. Anything that you wanted to add to that, Katie?
I'm sorry, Jed?
Anything else you wanted to add to my answer for submission?
I think you covered it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So Julie will read out, I think, another question that came in via chat.
Okay. And my question is, what are the cognitive or verbal requirements for participation? If we have nonverbal or minimally communicative adults, is the curriculum designed to include them and their families?
The curriculum is actually designed to include the person with disability, although if there's some way that the person can communicate what they want, then they could also participate in it. They just weren't necessarily part of the, when we did interviews with people with disabilities, we weren't able to do interviews with them. But what is required is that the person is there and be able to at least express some kind of
preference.
Preference.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like even doing the worksheets, it would be fine if a family member supported a person with a disability to think through and complete some of those worksheets. So if somebody's nonverbal but can indicate their preference for different things, that type of participation is kind of what we as the families that have participated in the past.
Wonderful. And we have another chat question here, and that is, can you clarify what acceptable budget items would be? And I think there's a second section here. So some acceptable budget items relative to the budget, if a full-time equivalent would not be covered by the $5,000, but would an in-kind to the project be covered?
Yes. Thank you for that question. So the budget items are very flexible. It's really what you and your organization feel you could and should use the money for to be able to implement this curriculum. There's no limitations on it. It's really up to you and what you think would work best for your organization. The $5,000, you're correct, is not enough to cover you know, a full FTE. It could be used to cover a portion of somebody's FTE, but also providing in-kind, you know, for people's time to put this on, and you can show that in the budget as well, to really show us who you're committing to this project, who's going to be working on it, how much of the money will be used for those people or other items that you think are needed, and how much will be in kind, or you'll be using other funding sources to supplement to be able to make this happen.
Wonderful. And another question here from our chat field. What will the reports consist of?
The reports are really just to assess that things are going well, that you know you're on target. You know, nothing super detailed, or you know, I mean, just to really find out from you how many families you've recruited at a certain point, and then how many families you have worked with so far. We'll be having check-in calls with the organizations regularly as well. So I think it's just kind of going to be like basics of sharing information about how things are going, what's working well, what's not working, so that we can get that information and feedback. The evaluation piece, Tamar, do you want to talk a little bit about that and what that will entail?
The evaluation hopefully will be very useful to you also, because you'll be able to kind of see for yourself, so you can have a report that you can talk about the program and the accomplishments. What we include is, in the beginning, we have some evaluation of kind of where your organization is in the beginning, sort of like a checklist of, you know, what you've done, what the capabilities are, what the confidence people have in working in this area, and then in the end, it's really to be able to see, you know, what you've accomplished as part of that, and what have been some of the outcomes for the families that participate. And we'll be pulling all of it together so that we have also data on how effective the program is using a train-the-trainer kind of model.
We really see this as a collaborative learning process for the organizations involved, and even for us as well, kind of working with you and being flexible and adapting along the way. We really, the goal is to help you learn the curriculum so that you can implement it and support you along the way.
Thanks, Katie, and thanks, Tamar. Just we did have a couple of questions about related to eligible organizations. I'll just, and I know we responded to this inquiry prior to the call, but why don't we share it on the call? We had a question that had come in. Would somebody working for a state government and a state agency be eligible to apply for the mini grant?
Yes. You know, a state organization is welcome to apply. We'll be looking at all of the different applications that come in to make our selections, but any organization that feels they have the capacity to implement the curriculum with families and really help families learn how to plan for the future is eligible to apply.
Great, and so I'll just, this is another one with a specific situation for an organization. Would a collection of rural communities who do not have ready access to supports be considered? This would be coming through a church who reaches out to families in several communities in their particular state. The church itself does not offer supports to people with disabilities or intellectual disabilities.
Yes. Again, any organization that feels like they can learn this curriculum and implement it with families, absolutely. And having creative models with different partnerships like that, could be interesting. I think that just in the application process, just kind of explaining that, why you think you have the capacity to implement the curriculum, that's really what we're going to be looking at to make our selections about which organizations to choose.
Thanks, Katie. And Julia Reed, I think I believe we've gotten another question that came in via the chat.
Sure. So we have two actually. And the first is a funding question as well. So the person said, we currently provide one-on-one future care planning service to individuals with disabilities and their caregivers. Would you consider an application from our organization so that we would be able to compare the success of both methods and compare and contrast them?
Yes.
No, it's all part of wanting to learn of some of the best approaches to use.
All right, and then the other question here is for organizations that have a long history of providing various topics but not this specific curriculum, will that be considered a positive or a negative?
Yes, share that information in the application, and we'll take that into consideration in our selection. I don't know either way. I think it's just information that if you feel is relevant related to your capacity as an organization, or a group of organizations or a partnership to be able to do this, then feel free to share that in the application process.
Great. Well, I don't see any more questions that have come in to us via email or the chat feature, so we will now unmute all the lines, and hopefully there won't be any background noise, and then if anybody has a question that they would like or additional follow-up to any of the questions that have been asked, feel free to ask that at this time.
Just noticed one question that didn't get
The leader has turned lecture off and your lines have been unmuted.
Oh, okay. How many families?
The leader has turned lecture on and your line will remain muted until the conference leader unmutes your line.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Well, I can't answer exactly how many, but I can tell you that we've probably done the training in at least 10 states, if not more. It was also done in Europe, in Switzerland. We've sent out many of the curriculums out there. So it's kind of hard for me to tell you exactly how many, but the particular study had 40 people, 38 people actually in the intervention, something like that. And it was done all over the state of Illinois. The actual intervention, it was done in rural areas, and it was done all over the state. So just to give you an idea of that.
Great. I'm not sure if the lines are unmuted. If any of the participants on the call has a verbal question.
Jed, this is Katie. It seems like the line's unmuted and then may have muted again. I wonder if maybe they have to be unmuted a second time.
The leader has turned lecture off, and your lines have been
Okay,
unmuted.
are people able to ask their questions?
Feel free to speak up, anyone that has a question on the phone.
I don't have any questions, but I'll just test this so that you know you can hear people.
Okay, great.
Thanks. And did I see another thing in the chat feature? Go back up. No, okay. Yeah, I think we've covered everything. Any other questions? If people either put it in the chat feature or if you'd prefer to email lastcalls at jjohnson@easterseals.com. Or verbally if folks are on the line, still on the line, and they'd like to ask a question. Tamar or Katie, any final comments from your end?
No, we look forward to getting all the applications.
Yeah, and if you do have questions, feel free to email us. Our contact information is on this final slide. For anything relevant to the curriculum, you can email myself or Tamar, and anything related to the application process, feel free to email Jed.
Perfect. And like I say, I will acknowledge when those applications are received. I'll send out an email. We'll also, once the transcriptioning is completed and we have the recording, we'll also I can also add that and have that available to people, and then I'll send out an email to everyone that registered for the call today as well, so that they can get a chance to share that or re-listen to things if they would like to go back and listen to that again. So we appreciate your joining us. Have a wonderful rest of the week, and we look forward to seeing those applications come in.
Thanks, Jed, Tamar, and Katie.
Thank you. There.
Let it go for a while.